Good afternoon to you. Mark Seth, HurricaneTrack.com here. Monday now, December 4th. Hard to believe it's December already. December 4th, 2023. On the update today, among other things, we're going to talk about the new CANsips data, hurricane season puzzle pieces, gradually starting to fall in place for 2024, that is. Yes, we do look this far out because we can, because we've got these climate models that we can at least look and see what the possibilities are, so we'll examine that. And then, of course, we've got a severe weather threat coming up in about 6 days. 6 days away, the models are starting to hint at a potential big severe weather day for parts of the deep south. We'll talk about that. And in between all of this, a pretty potent winter storm, but otherwise pretty much warm air dominating most of the country right now. No big major Arctic outbreaks. And without big temperature differences, gradients in temperature, right? We're not getting any major storms of any huge significance, but maybe a pretty big one as we approach the weekend. So let's get on with it. See what we got. By the way, clearly, finally, I'm feeling 100% better, at least as close. 99.7. The flu, a very annoying thing. That is for darn sure. So it's good to be back and pretty much at full energy here as we start December. All right, so what do we got out there? Well, the sea surface temperature anomaly chart, this map here, this Mercator projection map of the entire globe stretched out onto a rectangle, shows us departures from the long-term average, about 30 years of averages. There's our El Nino. This is going to disappear. I'm almost certain of it. And this is probably going to stick around, if not enhance more. So you're going to have a positive AMO, or Atlantic multi-decadal oscillation, also a warm Atlantic, whatever you want to call it. This is going to go away, so we're going to put a negative over here. Eventually this is going to go away, and that is going to shape next year's hurricane season. And yes, we can see this all the way out, even right now, in December of 23. It's pretty amazing, isn't it? And I'll explain as we go along. First, subsurface data. If you took this area right here and you sliced through it just like that and looked at it in the vertical, this is what it would look like. Your anomalies over the equatorial Pacific, and let me control F5 that so we can restart the GIF animation. These are, and if I can just expand it there, come on. These are your anomalies up at the surface, and that's where your El Nino resides. Below the surface, down 100, 200 meters or so, still a lot of warmth sitting over in the eastern Pacific, but look towards the end of the animation here. A lot of subsurface cold starting to build in the Westpac. That is just waiting for the trades to resume. The models are starting to see that happening as we get into 2024. This El Nino event here will dissipate. It'll fall over time. We're going to probably head towards cold neutral, maybe even a La Nina next year. Don't want to go that far just yet, but I'm really confident that we're going to lose this El Nino. One of the things that we will track over the coming months, I wanted to show you this today, just to remind you that we do use this as a tool. The Southern Oscillation Index, the pressure difference between Tahiti and Darwin, Australia, out here in the southwestern Pacific. The Southern Oscillation Index, typically when it is strongly negative, like it's been for the last several months, you get an El Nino. And when it is strongly positive, you typically get a La Nina. Right now, looking at September, pretty negative there, 13. October came up a little bit. November dipped a little bit. So we're still, though, at about -8. And the Bureau of Meteorology down in Australia shows typically -7, and lower is your El Nino threshold. It's just a really good literal barometer. I say barometer because it's measuring pressure differences between Tahiti. You ever been to Tahiti? I haven't. Probably a nice place. And Darwin in Australia. Those pressure differences tell us the SOI. And this has been tracked for a long time, many, many, many decades. And the Australians keep track of it for precipitation patterns and other things that help them understand their growing seasons, their grasslands, potential for fires down there, the moisture content. It's all important. So this has been tracked for a long, long time. And it's just one of the ways that we can keep up with how the pressure patterns are evolving that will eventually affect what we call the ENSO, the El Nino Southern Oscillation Phenomenon. And again, most of these numbers are negative right now. In fact, they all are. Today's contributor, -1, but that's still negative, right? It is. We'll watch this, and once this starts to really go up, then we will start to see this change. We're going to get more trade winds blowing across this way. That'll start to disrupt this. The cold water can then come in and upwell. Then we'll lose the El Nino, and we could head into La Nina. That is what the CFS V2 is suggesting. One of many models, certainly, but it's got a pretty good plummet here coming up as we get into 2024. And by the time we get into the hurricane season, not going to be an El Nino. Very, very confident. And there's just a lot of other reasoning behind this that suggests this will be the case, that we're going to lose the El Nino, and it's just going to be a matter of how much of this warm anomaly in the Atlantic hangs around. And most of the climate models suggesting the Atlantic will stay warm into next year. Now, remember this? I talked about this at the beginning of November. We will discuss at the beginning of each month the CANsips. We have the CFS. We have the Euro seasonal. Eventually, we'll have the UK Met, and we'll talk about that more in March and April. But every month, we get a new CANsips set of data, the Canadian seasonal to interannual prediction system. This is version 2. I will put a link to this in today's description if you want to go through and educate yourself on what all this is about. It's pretty serious stuff, and it helps to visualize patterns, large-scale patterns for the future. And we're all the way out here now. What is this, June I've got it queued up on? And this is the precipitation anomaly for next June. And the model, lots of different models, and sort of compiling it all together. It's not just one, it's like an ensemble, if you will, suggesting that the precipitation anomaly departures from the long-term average. The green is more than average. And look, it's aimed through the deep tropics here, and in June the intertropical convergence zone will be pretty far to the south. But then you've got a pretty good amount of activity here in the Eastern Caribbean and some in the Gulf of Mexico. Is this exactly what's going to happen? No. But it's a suggestion. The model is seeing something to create this. You understand? It's sensing the pattern. I don't know how to explain the mechanics of it, but this is the output, and that's what's important. What does it show? Well, that's June. This is July. And look, the ITCZ starts to lift north. July looks really active. I mean, holy mackerel. Wow. You know, and we're going to talk about this when I'm done presenting this. Like, what can we do about this? August and then September. September suggests a very busy time of lots of tracks all over the place. And I think we're going to have a really big hurricane season next year just based on this data, the loss of the El Nino, which does seem pretty much inevitable, to quote the great Thanos, right? Isn't that what he said? It's inevitable. So, or I think he said he's inevitable, but whatever. I believe we're going to lose the El Nino, the warm ENSO, and then this is the precip pattern. Let's go back to June and see what the temperature pattern looks like. Click on thermodynamics, see surface temperature anomaly. Yikes! That is what the CANsips is suggesting, forecasting for the Atlantic basin. The cold water relative to averages in the North Atlantic, your warmth, the gradient down here is the most pronounced in the deep tropics, and then you've got the very warm Eastern Atlantic off the west coast of Africa and the Iberian Peninsula. Typically a classic look for a busy hurricane season. That's what you would expect. That's what it pretty much looked like this year. And we had a very busy season, even against the strong El Nino. You take that El Nino out, and next year could be formidable. This is what it looks like for July, and then August, and then next September, a very, very warm Atlantic. And then, just to peek at what the CANsips is suggesting for the tropical Pacific, you can just see it here. Let's see if I can find a better area. North Atlantic. No, I don't really have a good one that shows the tropical Pacific. There we go. We'll do the North Pacific. Darn it, it still cuts off the equator. You can still see it, though, down at the bottom here. It's got a La Nina painted in there. The CANsips really going cold. I probably overlooked something. Don't scream at the computer. It's okay. You get the idea. The CANsips is very aggressive, if you will, impressive, whatever you want to call it. And this should be a call to action. I want to pause just for a second. I talked about this with our patrons the other day. I made a post on Patreon. What do we do with this? I don't want to put this out there and just drop maps and, oh, look at this, and, hype it up without context and without understanding, well, what should you even do about this? I think, and I'm going to really be pushing this in the off season, that heading into next year, we always want to prepare for just that one, certainly, right? But you start seeing patterns like this. I always say that this is a gift, that the science is giving us this gift of seeing into the future like this. We need to take advantage of that and do something. Get your insurance in order. Get flood insurance if you don't already have it. If you're a renter, get renter's insurance. Make sure your generator is operational, whether it's a little pull start one or a whole home generator. You might not have had the Generac people or whoever come out and check it in some time. Do that. Just do something. Say, look at this. Oh, it could be a very busy season. Wherever you are, from the Eastern Caribbean through the Greater Antilles, Central America, Florida, the Gulf Coast, elsewhere, Florida Peninsula, to Texas and beyond up the East Coast, Canada, wherever. Because that is a look that says you should prepare for hurricane season more so than probably in the last several years. That's what this tells me. And I'm going to approach it from, we better be ready as an entity here, our team, our crowdfunding people, our whole project. We need to make sure we're ready with the best equipment possible to put out in whatever might happen. And then personally, just making sure my house is prepared, which we generally are, hopefully, right? I should be. But seriously, look at this and equate this to a trigger to get your brain in motion. You got to do something. Get those trees trimmed. Just think about it. Everybody's financial situation is different. You don't got to go crazy. And I don't want this to worry you. I want this to motivate you. I don't want worried and scared viewers. That doesn't help. I want motivated and educated. Educated first, and then you're motivated to do something based on that knowledge. Because, it's cliche, but knowledge is power. And we have this foresight here. I'm recording this on December 4th, and this is all the way out to next September. Do something, all right? All right. In the Pacific Northwest, leaving the tropics for a little bit, don't want to ignore our friends out here in the Pac Northwest. I've never been up to this area. Thought about heading up there for this event or series of events. It's just very expensive. I don't know the area too well, and I've still been getting over the flu, so there's my excuses. But one day, or one set of days when we get another set of big storms coming in, I would like to travel to this area. It's just part of my geography and weather interests, right? And the reason, look, we got some major flood stages going on some of these rivers. Nice infographic here from the Weather Prediction Center. Flood watch is in effect. There's just been a series of storm systems coming in as a pretty potent atmospheric river. Narrow channel of moisture coming into the Pacific Northwest, Northern California, but elsewhere, Southern Cal, Southwest U.S. kind of left out. But this will be helpful for some of the fire issues they've had, especially because this does extend up into British Columbia and into Canada. The more moisture you can get, the better, right? But it does come with some impacts. So if you're traveling out here, if you're already out there, you already know, but I just wanted to bring this up. They are dealing with, and if you're out there, you are dealing with quite an active pattern. Speaking of active patterns, saw this from Dr. Ryan Maui. Yep, looks like a pretty potent storm system. We'll look at a few of these graphics that he has embedded within his tweet here. And yes, remember, I'm never going to call it anything other than Twitter. Hey, I even saw Elon on that that deal book thing with Andrew Sorkin, and he even referred to them as tweets and Twitter, even if accidentally, a few times. Anyhow, this tweet here from Dr. Maui. We do have a potent storm system coming in over the next several days. Where it lines up, the details, right? It's just like hurricanes. We don't know exactly where the impacts will be, but we do know that there will be a pretty potent storm. It could drop some snow on the northwest side. It could have a big wind component, especially the mid-Atlantic, and the offshore waters really, wow. And then, of course, the potential for some severe weather. We'll look at that in a second. This is preliminary, early, whatever, these snow totals, whatever, that'll change. But the idea of a pretty nasty storm, and a major winter storm at that, for later in the weekend, we got to be on the lookout for it. And the Storm Prediction Center, of course, they're seeing it, and it's at day 6 here. The upper level trough that'll be coming out of the west, forecast to move into the southern plains on Saturday. Ahead of the trough, surface dew points in the 60s with a strong bunch of dynamics, still some remnant coughing, sorry. Bottom line is all hazards will be possible, from tornadoes, wind damage, and isolated large hail. And very important here, the models are now in good agreement concerning this scenario, and as such, they've put that 15% contour for this area through here. You got eastern Texas, much of western, northwestern Louisiana, teeny piece of Oklahoma, a good chunk of southern Arkansas. Warm Gulf of Mexico will feed into this storm system. Your low pressure at the surface, the front coming through, the upper level jet dynamics slicing around. Yup, it could be nasty. So we got to watch this. I'm not doing these updates every day now. Not like I'm the only source of weather for you. I mean, come on, right? But pay attention. Remember this. This is coming up over the weekend, and we're all busy on the weekends. I know I am. GFS, different look to it here. This is the 500 millibars, so you can see the sort of the jet stream, and then, of course, your mean sea level pressure as well. And we bumped this out to the weekend. There's Saturday. Notice the trough here on the GFS, kind of broad, versus the Euro at that same time. All right, we get towards the weekend. The Euro is sharper and even looks like a little bit of a cutoff low built in there as well. So that's the same time. This is 12Z Saturday. This is Sunday. So it looks like the Euro is slower. So if we go back to Saturday, yep, so the GFS, well, they're pretty similar. But once you get to Sunday, boy, the Euro really amps it up. So Saturday night into Sunday, the severe potential could be significant. Wind, snow, storminess. If you're flying this weekend, that could be yuck. Turbulence, airport problems, Atlanta, maybe. And eventually moving up into parts of the Northeast. And if we just go back, I thought this was interesting. Let's just look at the Euro here. It doesn't depict snow or frozen precip at tropical tidbits. Some of the sites do. But look what happens up here in the Northeast as this goes through. Maybe some pretty potent lake effect. That's what the greens show, the precip there. Those plumes coming off the lakes. Maybe I'll try to head up there for that. We'll see. I want to see how things evolve. But the bottom line, both the Euro and the GFS depicting a pretty potent storm system, but the lack of truly cold air, the dynamics that comes with that, keeps this from being much more than sort of your garden variety, minor headache winter storm, I guess is a good way to put it. And then after that, just to show you, we kind of get zonal with everything. In other words, the flow more or less comes across the country instead of down into the country from Canada. And so we don't have a lot of storminess between now and at least the run-up to Christmas. A couple of potentials, but no major Arctic outbreaks. And again, without the cold air, you just don't have the dynamics. There's some cold air, but no big Arctic outbreaks just yet. And as such, the pattern won't be too stormy. All right, got the calendar. One sitting right here with me. And if you want to get one, it's really cool. I've sold a few, sent a few to some of our patrons. I'm proud of it. I think it's neat to have a calendar finally. Different historic weather pictures that I've put in here from over the years. I don't want to give them all away. You got to get the calendar and see yourself. There's a few thumbnails of what some of the months look like. Some of them are from this year. Some of them are from a long time ago. And then some of them have a very interesting story behind them, like, why is there a picture of ice along the Hudson River? Well, you get the calendar and you'll understand. One of the big things that it does show, though, is how we have branched out since 2014, especially, to cover more than just hurricanes. I'm a weather geek at heart. Hurricanes might be my forte, and I've certainly done the most work in hurricanes, but a lot of what we do during hurricane season, we practice and learn and use new technology during non-hurricane season time. So go to the link that I post on today's description right here, premium.hurricanetrack.com/calendar, and I finally got it to where it works, the little click here deal. It'll take you over to PayPal, and you can order a calendar. There's a few dozen of them left. I don't have thousands. I'm not expecting to sell thousands. That would be a great Christmas present. But I just think it's neat. And, if you want one, makes a great Christmas present. It's unique. And I sign them all, too. I put a little note in there for you, once you order. So head over to that link in the description and pick up a 2024 calendar. And you get a walk through history through pictures and little descriptions. All right? So there you go. A look at the CANsips, the active pattern coming up. Even though it's not too active, we can handle it. Probably going to have a more active pattern, and it just makes sense once we get post December 20th, around there. Christmas and beyond, yes, there are some signs that things could start to get more active, which you would expect because more cold air will start coming into the lower 48, and these updates will become a little bit more interesting probably, all right? So that is it from me for today and for the week. I'll be back with you next Monday, and we'll see what's happening in the world of weather. All right? Until then, as always, we appreciate you tuning in, all of us here at Hurricane Track. I am Mark Sudduth, the host of this update for you. Again, thanks for watching. I'll see you again in a week.